Welcome to Lifting the Lid on Technology, a podcast series brought to you by Softsource in association with New Zealand's leading IT vendors and experts. I'm Barry White, VCIO Principal Consultant at Softsource. In this series, we explore opportunities and challenges in the world of IT. Part 1 of this episode included insights about SD-WAN, Cloud Native Management and AI from Andrew Fox, Aruba's New Zealand Country Manager. For Part 2, we continue to explore networking challenges for New Zealand businesses at the intelligent edge, looking more closely at working from home, privacy, security, and Aruba's ESP solution. Fill some gaps in there for me because in our last podcast we were talking about the work from home scenario and the effects of COVID, and I was aware that Aruba had a formalised project around contact tracing from a network standpoint. Let's talk a bit about privacy and security then, because that kind of raises that question as well. And you talk about this zero trust sort of concept. Do you want to talk to that as a sort of a theme? And again, it's one of those bits of jargon you hear it knocked around, but what does it really mean?
Well, zero trust is not an Aruba term. It's sort of an industry term now, which is really cool. How networking used to be, where you put a big wall up around the outside to stop people from coming in. Once you're in, you were kind of on the network. The problem with that is if you manage to get in, then you kind of have free rein around the inside of an enterprise, and that plainly is no good. So, quite a few years ago now, there was lots of different methods of segregating traffic inside your average network. You'd VLAN things off so different device types couldn't speak to each other and all these kinds of things. But there's still some inherent weaknesses in that. Today, where the thinking is that nothing should have access to the network except if you want it to. So by default, the answer is no. And we will allow you access to different parts of the network and different things on the network based on who you are. So based on the device you're using, the credentials you're using, the time of day, the location, those kinds of things. Good example is I should not be able to walk in, and tragically I still can in many companies around New Zealand, but I shouldn't be able to walk into your reception and unplug a VoIP phone from the wall and plug my laptop in and get a connection to your network. Even if my connection is on your voice VLAN, best case. I should not be able to do that. So today's network is capable of so much more. So as I connect my laptop to the wall, it is profiled and fingerprinted, identified or not. I don't know this device. What's my policy held centrally? What's my policy on devices I don't know? The answer is gone. Not even an IP address, just get off the network. That keeps me safe as an organization. Maybe if I'm really nice, and my policy for devices I don't know, I will tunnel them out, pop up a captive portal, get them to identify as a guest, and then I'll give them access to the internet via a tunnel, so it never touches my corporate network. That's very generous of you, but, I may do that. Similarly, there's no excuse for me as a salesperson signing on to the network and seeing the finance system. If the finance team sign onto the network, they see the finance system. So I can make decisions on better example, even a camera. If a video camera that could be made anywhere in the world by people that tend not to be security professionals first, they tend to be camera professionals first. But if you connect a camera to your network, there's no business for that to be able to talk to anything but the endpoint. Maybe it's a camera recorder or something like that, or a recording server, or, it should not be able to see anything else. And should the camera be compromised and want to go out and discover other devices on the network, there's no excuse for it to see anything but that one endpoint. And so that means even if we are compromised, there's some very high profile compromises that you hear about, the fish tank in Vegas, where there was a network attached temperature probe, I think it was, a very famous hack they got in there. Home Depot, I think it was, got hacked via the air conditioning system. The air conditioning system has no business talking to anything, but maybe it's the building management system.
Printers is another good example, right?
Yeah. Correct. So now those decisions can be made as you connect to the network. It's this concept of we call it dynamic segmentation, but the industry talks a lot about microsegmentation. So I connect a printer to the network. It's identified as a printer. Maybe its MAC address is checked on some sort of asset list. Is it one of my known printers? Yes, it is. I'll connect it to the printer VLAN and I'll give it access to the print server. End of story. You know what I mean? So it gets access to nothing else. If I pull that out of the wall and I plug my laptop in, the process starts again.
Yeah.
So it's kind of making those decisions at time of connection in milliseconds. That is where today's networks are going. And the other benefit of that, we talked before around skills and jobs that network professionals are doing now. We have a technology that we call Aruba ClearPass, which sits in the middle of the network and does that policy management for your network. All of these policies and decisions are all defined centrally and made centrally by a clever network person that we talked about before. Here's the rules for my network. Here's what should happen. Imagine that Barry accidentally clicks on a dodgy phishing link and ends up with a ransomware message or something like that. It's very common today. We're seeing a lot of trouble with our customers, typically customers that we're not dealing with yet, but that's clicking on links and ending up, with ransomware attacks. Typically, the first device to know about that is the firewall as the user tries to exit on a certain port or something like that. The advantage of this centralized security segmentation that I was talking about is that we have the ability then to make a change. So the firewall tells us that Barry's PC has done something dodgy and probably is compromised. We can change his role and we can put him in a sandbox and kick him off the network, or kick him off the network and send an email to him, or kick him off the network and log a ticket automatically. So when he calls the help desk, they can say, yes, we can see, Barry, what happened. What did you click on, Barry? Don't do that again, Barry. But that's a much more proactive conversation, but it's all in this sort of security automation space.
From a policy standpoint, and as a virtual CIO, I'm kind of interested in this because I do get engaged in conversations with executive team members around policy, across the board, obviously not just networking. And I guess in the past, there's been a lot of trust placed in those technical professionals to have applied the right policies without any real, probably in-depth knowledge at a management level. So if we come back to that kind of policy framework that Aruba provides, how do you approach those conversations with customers?
We do it in a few ways. We have a massive community of users. We call them our Aruba Airheads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've seen that online, yeah.
I think something around 60,000 now globally. And these are professionals that are using our equipment. Some of them are Arubans. Some of them are people that are using competition equipment, just network professionals that love to help. And typically it's a fantastic place to go for advice on how other people overcame challenges. That's a really, really good way to do it. The point on policy is completely true. So this new world, it becomes really important that your policy is solid and well thought out. The last thing you want is to either make it too open, so there's room for threats or compromise, or too closed. Suddenly, inadvertently, you're making it so your users can't get to the places they need to get to. So it's really important to get it right. So we tend to use a workshop approach with our clients. Sit them down, whiteboard what they're trying to achieve, help them. And there's a full series of education and certifications and things that stand behind that a lot of our clients tend to sit themselves because they want to be in control. If the network itself is going to be automated, the crown jewels then become that policy piece in the middle, and they want to completely be in control and understand every moving part inside that policy. The good news is it's not as complicated as it used to be.
It's probably more visible now, right? And it's more accessible than perhaps it was.
Correct. Yeah. And the zero trust helps. You can write yourself a series of policies and you can say, simulate these, please, and tell me what you would do on my network right now. And it will show you, I would stop this, I'd allow this, I'd stop that, and get it all right first before you kind of turn it on in anger. So it's a very powerful set of solutions, but amazing for, today's boards. There's massive focus on security and keeping off the front page. And, you see the damage that's been done to some companies that get crypto locked or, lose data and stuff like that. So more and more, anything that will help that posture become better is getting a lot of attention.
I asked you a sort of a state of the nation question a little bit earlier on around cloud migration. I'm going to ask you the same question more from a networking perspective and a New Zealand perspective. So based on your experience, where are we here? Are we sort of behind the eight ball in this kind of modern thinking around SD-WAN and we've got we've got some catching up to do? Or
I think we have some catching up to do. I think in our market, the large telcos who typically provide legacy WAN services, they are still very well entrenched. I think we're a little bit slow on coming to the market with alternatives. The great news is, and companies like Softsource are doing a fantastic job at this. The great news is now, especially with our amazing broadband connectivity, it's possible now to build yourself an SD-WAN solution with the help of someone like Softsource way cheaply and way more simply than you would have in the legacy, WAN/MPLS/whatever else here days, and typically it tends to be fast to market and it tends to cost less than the traditional solution. So I think it's growing fast here, but I think we're a little bit behind everyone else. The great news is, as I said before, is we're quite prepared to try new things. And if it's going to save me money and make the experience of my users better, my experience is that most companies in New Zealand would be prepared to give it a go. So that's the message we're trying to get out at the moment.
So if you were to kind of try to wrap all that up, you've talked about ESP, and what can customers expect to get in that solution, and how was, for example, the recent acquisition of Silver Peak, how has that sort of further fortified that solution?
So the Edge Services Platform, ESP, that's what it stands for, that is our cloud platform upon which everything we do is built. So inside that platform, you can manage your wired solutions, your switches. You can manage your wireless solutions, access points primarily, and all of your SD-WAN gateways and tunnels and orchestration and all those things that go together to make an SD-WAN solution, and in a single pane of glass. So everything is available in one place on the cloud. There's sort of three layers to the ESP story. The first layer is this unified infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So, if you buy an access point from me, I talked about management before. You can manage it how you like. But if you want to connect that to a controller in a more traditional model, you can do that. If you want to manage it in the cloud and have a virtual controller inside the machine, you can do that as well. I'm giving you that flexibility.
Yeah, a lot of people don't want to hear that because they probably don't want to throw out the bathwater either.
Correct. So if you decide, actually, we started off with 5 APs. We've now got 55 APs, and the world's changed. I want to add a gateway or add some other component to the network. You're not stranded on the other side of the equation. So again, we believe you purchased it, you should be able to use it any way you like. So it's the same infrastructure in my 3 access point house as it is in a 3,000 access point university. So there's no difference in the infrastructure, right? So same quality, you get what it says on the box. It's going to do the job that it says it's going to do. That's the first thing around that infrastructure. The second part of the layer is that zero trust security that we talked about before. So the Edge Services Platform is right in the middle of that. Around visibility, what is actually on your network. I know you think you know what's there, but what is actually there? And is there stuff that we don't understand?
And can you surface that in a useful way?
Correct. And then on top, that top layer is the AI ops piece.
From a scenario point of view, and if you talk about traditional infrastructure versus this modern SD-WAN infrastructure, are there certain types of environments or sites that suit SD-WAN better than others?
SD-WAN is fantastic, if you have multiple sites.
Right, yeah.
And if you have a management problem in keeping, things straight at multiple sites. And the great thing is that the cost to entry now is at the point, especially with, the business broadband, the amazing experience we can get here in New Zealand, getting that manageability and visibility on a 3-branch network is completely affordable and easy to do. Once upon a time...
That's my next question, by the way.
Yeah, that was hard. Once upon a time that was difficult. If you were massive and you had 50 branches, you'd start to look at this stuff. But the barriers to entry and the cost to entry have remarkably come down And so now, even a customer with a couple of branches can get the benefits of SD-WAN. And by the benefits, I'm talking about, the ability to see what traffic is going where, to orchestrate, to control how, if a user hits this application, do they break out to the internet at your branch and go straight up to Office 365? Do they go down the link to head office? If I've got a backup 4G link, I'm making it up now, does this kind of traffic go down that backup link, or does it only go down the main link? What happens to guest traffic? If the main link goes down, does it stop? Does it go up the 4G? There's all this policy stuff, but it all happens in real time. And that you asked before about the impact of our purchase of Silver Peak. Silver Peak, Aruba's been in the top right-hand quadrant, in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for wired and wireless networking for 16 years. We are, we live there a lot, along with one or two others. But in the SD-WAN space, we were challengers. So what Silver Peak had is this command of this top right-hand quadrant, and some fantastic IP and some great people, actually, it's turned out, which is cool. So that's why Aruba has purchased Silver Peak, to get that technology and get their thinking in this SD-WAN orchestration space. We're doing some very, very clever things. And in the short term, there are two solution sets which suit slightly different types of customers. In the long term, I'm sure we'll see integration and of feature sets and things like that, which will come together, which will be a better answer for everyone.
Yeah. So last question, Andrew, and you kind of sort of touched on it there a little bit. I know one of the concerns talking to IT managers about network in general is they kind of think of it a bit like a fridge freezer, really. It's not something they want to change too often. But they also recognise that the security landscape has changed a lot, as we've just talked about, and changed very quickly, and IoT is making that change even faster, right? So given this is probably suggesting there's some more investment there, how is Aruba making that easier for customers to embrace some of these new benefits?
Some of our customers continue to procure like they always have. We are capital rich. We will purchase chunks of equipment as and when we need them on some sort of refresh cycle. That's a very traditional approach. But more and more, as you say, if there are customers that are capital constrained, we are completely headed towards making everything that we sell at Aruba, and in fact at HPE, so it's a much bigger statement, available on an as-a-service basis. So you can already buy from Aruba or from Softsource, cloud management subscriptions for switches and APs and SD-WAN gateways, 1, 3, 5, 7, 10 years, that's kind of standard. What's changing now is you can also buy from someone like Softsource, a managed service provider. You can buy access points and switches on a subscription over 1, 3, 5, 7, 10 year period as well. So hardware and software as $1 per.
Scale it per user.
So it completely scales per user. So it means that, you pay as you grow rather than pay and hope that your growth will justify the purchase that you made. So that is completely where we've got the foot hard to the floor, and that's where we're headed. And most of the customers I talk to are completely supportive and looking forward to having that kind of arrangement. And, the soft sources of the world, who are our managed service provider channel, who will take our hardware and software and wrap your capability around that and then on-sell that to your customers, are key to making that work.
Look, I've certainly learned a few things, and really appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us today.
Quite welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us as we discussed networking challenges at the Intelligent Edge with Andrew Fox from Aruba. And we look forward to welcoming you back for the next instalment of our Lifting the Lid on Technology podcast. Tune in for more great content as we continue to explore the opportunities and challenges in the world of IT.